Yotsuya Kaidan was originally a kabuki play which became the most adapted story in all of Japan. It is well known for being one of the inspirations of the horror icons Sadako from The Ring and Kayako from The Grudge. As the story features extreme violence against women as well as a masculinist setting, it is possible to extract anti-feminist themes from the story. Since most media that tries to make a feminist or anti-feminist argument incorporates arguments from both sides, we can analyze the story of Yotsuya Kaidan from both angles to gain a better understanding of the complexities of female representation in the media. After an argument, a masterless samurai named Iemon killed a man because he refused to let his daughter Oiwa marry him. He then told Oiwa that he would find her father's murderer if she marries him. Later, Iemon became miserable in the marriage and cheated on her with a woman named Ome. So that Iemon would abandon Oiwa entirely, Ome's family poisoned Oiwa with a medicine that made her face feel like it was burning. At the same time, Iemon sent a man named Takuetsu to sexually assault her so that he could have a basis for divorce. When Takuetsu arrived, he was disturbed as her face was disfigured and her hair was falling off. She became hysterical and accidentally stabbed herself and placed a curse on Iemon. From then on, Iemon had visions of Oiwa which constantly haunted him. These visions tricked him into killing everyone who was closest to him, including Ome and her family. Her torment only ended after a man who Iemon had previously attempted to kill got his revenge. Oiwa's torment only ended after Iemon's death. The original story of Yotsuya Kaidan was written by a man, but also acted by men, as it was during a time where women were outlawed from performing in theater. Furthermore, the horror of the story also comes from the fear of the female body, as Oiwa changes from a beautiful housewife into a grotesque monster. The defining characteristics of how women were represented in kabuki came from the cross-dressing actor Yoshizawa Ayame I, who considered virtue and softness to be essential for women's representation. Yoshizawa based his female representation on the keise, or courtesan. Courtesans were educated women whose jobs consisted of performing their femininity and being sexually available, both of which were for the satisfaction of men. In other words, women in kabuki theater were representations of the male idea of the perfect woman. As the play progressed, the character portrayed as the perfect woman became the disfigured monster. The fear of women being so ugly that they couldn't be subjected to the male gaze is part of where the fear comes from. The play is also a story in which Oiwa serves as a vehicle for abuse suffered by people in silence. She is incapable of doing anything to Iemon due to the social norms at the time. Up to her death, she is confined by gender norms. And although there are no morally good characters in the play, Oiwa's turning point of her death makes her evil. This reflects the idea from Japan's Shinto religion that purity is good and impurity is bad. As death is considered impure, so is Oiwa. Before I talk about how this story can be interpreted from a feminist angle, it is important to note that the story was originally written during Japan's Edo period. At this time, there were two important developments. First, Japan had a rise in the leisure class, which led to the development of new forms of entertainment. Second, this was during a time of Japanese history, where women's rights were at their lowest. As such, Oiwa's position at the start reflects the women of the time period. Oiwa is a passive protagonist at the start of the story, as actions of others affect her, yet her own actions don't do anything. She instead plays the role of the perfect housewife. Characters remark that she is beautiful, and she is shown repeatedly as protective over her child. Oiwa remains this way even when Iemon gets tired of her and starts abusing her. She is confined by her gender roles, and her husband not allowing her to take control of the situation. Later in the story, after she reveals that she's been disfigured, she gets ready to confront Iemon by brushing her hair. In this famous scene, her hair falls off as she brushes it. This act of brushing is a parody of romance plays from the time where women tried to look pretty for their husbands. As her hair falls out in a gruesome way, it would have elicited disgust in the male audience, as it is a complete reversal of the trope. When she accidentally kills herself, her death marks the turning point of her character. She vows to take revenge on Iemon as she dies with her baby. Oiwa becomes more than a ghost, also being an embodiment of the failures of the patriarchy. This also marks the point where she stops being a passive protagonist and instead becomes an active antagonist. Her lack of control leads to her death, but sustained by the rage caused by the repression in her life, she is able to enact her revenge. One of the first things she does is haunt Iemon with visions of her death. She tricks him into murdering his new wife Ome by making Iemon think that it's her. This act of revenge is her breaking down the social structure of marriage which led to her death in the first place. Like her own father, Oiwa denies Iemon the right to marriage. She uses Iemon's own violence against him to deny this right. His violence is eventually what leads to his downfall at the end, when Oiwa's ghost enlists the help of a man Iemon wronged and Sode, Oiwa's sister. He tries to fight them off, but as he is haunted by visions of the ones he's killed, he is unable to defend himself. Oiwa is an interesting ghost as she starts within the confines of traditional gender roles and then uses the same roles for revenge. Her revenge directly uses the constructs that led to her own death. The masculinity that Iemon is given based on his gender roles is the same weapon that Oiwa uses to kill him. She kills a violent man with his own violence. The story of Yotsuya Kaidan is a complex tale that can be interpreted from both anti-feminist and feminist perspectives. The original story, written and performed by men, perpetuates traditional gender roles and portrays women as objects for male satisfaction. Oiwa's transformation from a beautiful wife to a disfigured monster reinforces societal norms that value beauty and virtue in women. However, a feminist reading of the story reveals the ways in which Oiwa is a victim of gender norms and abuse, and her transformation into a vengeful ghost can be seen as a rebellion against the patriarchy. Even modern works, such as Promising Young Woman, Blonde, Spring Breakers, and others can be analyzed in this way by looking at both feminist and anti-feminist perspectives. Ultimately, the story highlights the complexities of female representations in the media and the importance of considering multiple perspectives when analyzing works of fiction.